Hi, everyone. It is Jaime Jo Wright here at Madlit Musings. And I have with me today Robin Lee Hatcher. Hey, Robin, thanks for coming.
Hi, Jamie. Good to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. And I was going to tell you this right before I hit record, and then I said, no, I'm going to wait and tell it online because my readers will probably enjoy it too. But I was almost late for our podcast because do you ever have those moments where you're looking for something and you go into a complete panic and you lose track of time because you're trying to find it?
Yes.
And yeah, yeah, that was me. That was me for the last hour because I couldn't find the box of my mom's Christmas ornaments that I had salvaged when my dad moved into assisted living last Christmas. And I was trying to find them and I could not find them. And I thought, did they get accidentally tossed out? With the copious amounts of boxes, you get in this final frenzy of getting just clearing stuff out because what do we do? I could not find them. And literally 2 minutes before I was supposed to get on this call, I found them. I was texting Kimberly Woodhouse. I'm like, I can't find my mom's ornaments. And she goes, I'm going to pray. And then they magically appeared.
And there they were.
There
Yeah,
they
I
would.
yesterday I had a TV show on and like many, I stream,
Yeah, right.
it's not just like a regular TV.
Hmm.
Show was over and I couldn't find the TV control.
Oh,
And I just looked everywhere and I was like, I haven't been anywhere. I haven't done anything but be in the kitchen. I
yeah.
walked into the bedroom at one point. Did I carry it there? I looked and looked. I'd put it in the caddy where it's supposed to be, but I haven't remembered putting it in the caddy.
That's even worse. That's even worse when you're looking for something for so long and then it's actually where it's supposed to be, but you're so not used to it being where it's supposed to be. I did that once too. I think I wish they had, and maybe they do, but like with remotes for your house, that they had little things that you could stick to them so that you can, because you can do those beepers, find your phone things, and your phone will start beeping. I need those for my remote controls.
Right. I was wishing for an Apple tag
That's what it,
attached.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have it on my keys, but
Okay.
but there's no real way to put it on a remote
No,
control.
there's not. Hey, maybe we should come up with a new thing and then we can, that'll be our other hobby besides writing, selling
That's right.
remote control
I
finders.
always wished I'd invented, post-it notes and
Right.
whiteout back in the typewriter days.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I
I always
agree.
think of them afterwards. I think if I'd had another few days, I could have thought of that.
I know, right? So, yeah, let's talk typewriter days. You mentioned that. Now, I have to say, I think you're like, aren't you one of the trailblazers of Christian fiction? Because I feel like you have always had a place on my bookshelf for as long as I can remember, but I could be wrong.
Well, I wouldn't consider myself a trailblazer. That I would put
Okay.
more on Francine Rivers.
Okay.
Um,
Fair. That's
I,
fair.
there was definitely Christian fiction, but it
Okay.
exploded in the um, 90s.
Yes.
People like Terry Blackstock and Francine Rivers left the general market and came
Hmm.
into the Christian market. Um, but by my first Christian book, I've been published since 1984.
Okay.
But my first Christian book was published in 1999.
Okay. Hmm.
And by then things were starting to open up. But I remember saying science fiction will never be a Christian fiction genre. But uh, there were genres that I just thought
Right.
there's just no way they're going to
Hmm.
be in the Christian market. And then L.A. Marzulli wrote
Hmm.
a book called Nephilim,
Hmm.
and my brother is a big science fiction fan,
Okay.
and so I read it. Just scared me to death. I really bought into the premise that the Nephilim, that the the aliens that
Hmm.
supposedly, Area 52, and is it
Right.
52, 51,
51.
whatever it is,
Yep.
50, um, that the aliens are actually demons.
Mm.
And I remember the Christian goes down into Area 51 into the bunker where they supposedly have this
Yes.
alien spaceship. And the demon sees the Christian and sees Christ in him and assaults him.
Mm.
and it just scared me to death.
Yeah,
I
that's
really got
understandable.
into it, and I thought, okay, science. I would consider that science fiction, and
Right.
I
Yeah.
was like, okay, there's a legitimate genre in Christian fiction. So in my time in
Hmm.
Christian fiction, I have seen it go from just prairie fiction,
Okay.
and of course there was um, the spiritual warfare
Hmm.
books been out, but that
Right.
just a few,
Hmm.
and so it was mostly prairie fiction,
Right.
and suddenly with Francine coming on the scene and writing the Mark of the Lion series,
Hmm.
because Redeeming Love she actually did for a secular publisher first. That came
Right.
out
Yeah.
in 91, and that's the book that really set me on the trajectory to writing Christian fiction.
Oh, that's
It took a
cool.
number of years, but that
Hmm.
was the book.
Hmm.
And so you just began to see other things opening up
Yeah.
in big ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so by the time we were into this century,
Hmm.
uh, Christian fiction was really changed
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
is a genre. I consider Christian fiction a genre of its own, and then all
Right.
the
Subgenres,
genres.
Lisa. Yep. Yep. That makes total sense. It really has expanded because I was an avid reader. Gosh, I think I read my first Christian fiction, which shock was the Jeanette Oak book, because, that's everyone's first foray into Christian fiction. But I think I read that in the late 1980s, and I graduated from school in 94, and then I got married in 2000. And so just the ongoing evolution of reading fiction. And what's really funny for me now, and my point is this, is back in the day when I really started reading it voraciously, I was reading I was reading Tracy Peterson, I was reading Francine Rivers, of course, and then I'm trying to think who is the other. Oh, Judith Pella, Michael Phillips. Those were all like big names in the Christian industry. And then, like you said, things kind of started to evolve. And so then I started reading Colleen Coble and some of those writers there. And now it's so funny. Like I'm sitting here going, I'm sitting here talking to Robin Lee Hatcher now. Like these are the people like that are on the books, and you're like, they're far, far, far away people that you'll never meet. But wow, these are great stories. And then, I get a text from Tracy Peterson last night. I'm like, what is this world I'm living in now?
I, it's real funny. I think readers
Hmm.
um, have, they do sort of put writers on,
Oh,
if not a
absolutely.
pedestal, at least in another realm, kind of.
Right.
And I remember walking into a bookstore and having a fan see me and just hyperventilate. And as soon as somebody does that, I have this quick image in my mind of me in baggy sweatpants with a hole in the knee scrubbing my bathroom toilet. And
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
good way to stay humble, but
Yes.
it is just what the way I see it is that I'm just an ordinary person
Hmm.
who has an unusual job.
Oh, that's a great way of putting it. I like that.
And so that's just the way I live. And it is I mean, face it, we
Hmm.
hear voices in our heads and people don't put us in institutions.
See, I've thought of that before. I'm like, do people realize how much I hear voices? There should probably be a medication on my shelf or something. Oh, how fun is that? Well, take us a little bit for readers who aren't familiar with who you are, which shock if they're not, but that's okay. We love you. This is why we have these podcasts. Take us a little bit on your journey because you've written how many books now I mean, because
Let's see,
you were
I
general
just
market and
finished
Christian.
writing number 94.
Oh, wow. You're
Yeah,
six away
just
from 100.
so I'm doing the revising before it goes to my editor.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm in right now. So that's
Okay.
number 94. 93 is done, but it won't come out until next summer. So
Mm-hmm.
actually 94 will come out before 93, just to keep everybody confused,
Right.
including
Including the authors.
uh,
Yeah.
I I began my writing journey I was doing a back in the 19 in 1980, I
Okay.
had an idea rolling around in my head.
Okay.
And then a number of things happened, including I was writing a newsletter for a horse association,
Hmm.
and I got real bored with writing "Winter's coming, give your horse more grain," that kind of thing. So
Right.
I started writing more creative pieces like what my colt looked like running beside the dam in the
Mm.
through the snow. That
Hmm.
and so there were creative parts. And then there was an article in the newspaper about a woman who had her first book published. And then I read a book that I didn't like the ending.
Mm.
And I said the infamous words that I think have launched more careers than mine. Well, if that could get published, I could get
Yeah.
published.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I really, when I wrote my first book, though, it really wasn't with publication in mind so much as can I do it? I just
Yeah.
wanted to see if I could do it.
Right.
So I wrote longhand at night, and then I used the office typewriter on coffee breaks and lunch hours to type it back in the
Wow.
onion skin carbon copy days.
Hmm.
And I finished the book in 9 months,
Mm.
and I started um, sending it out to
Hmm.
publishers.
Hmm.
And I got a couple of requests for the full, and one of the publishers bought it, and they promptly went bankrupt. And so by that time, I had the sequel written. And
Okay.
so then the next year, I marketed those because at first I wasn't sure, hey, I've signed a contract. Am I okay to sell
Right.
it if they bankrupt? So it took
Right.
me a while to
Yeah.
know what I could do. And so then
Yeah.
I sold those two books to a New York publishing house.
Hmm.
Christian publishers weren't doing fiction,
Right. Yeah.
and really, except for Jeanette Oak.
Hmm.
And in fact, if I went into the Christian bookstore at that time, the Christian fiction was two books wide and one
Mm.
shelf. That was
Yeah.
Christian fiction. That was
Right.
your own choice. And so I sold to a New York publishing house. It actually sold to a romance publisher.
Okay.
It wasn't. It was a saga because
Oh,
that's what I loved from the time.
right. Right.
So I actually kind of learned to write romance um, as I was publishing books. It
Sure.
was a small publisher. They didn't edit me. It was book number 9 before I got a manuscript back with blue pencil on it, which was with a new publisher. All
Wow.
my and I do not recommend that. It's not the best way to start a writing career.
No.
So, in fact, I about had a heart attack when that manuscript came back with all those blue marks on
I'll
it
bet.
because I just
Like, what's
had no
this?
idea what was
Yeah,
supposed
like,
to happen.
right. And probably
And
even, I mean, I might have even been a little bit offended. Like, what are you doing with my book? Like,
I wasn't offended. I
okay.
actually was afraid they were going to ask for the advance back because obviously I couldn't write and
Oh,
I'd been fooling somebody. Um,
that's a genuine
so
fear too. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
it was like, well, and we all have imposter syndrome. I
Oh,
think most of us
absolutely.
have that.
Hmm.
So I have a huge respect for editors. I think maybe even more so because of that experience
Yeah.
of not being edited. And I will tell you that I did 30 books in the general market.
Hmm.
And I will tell you that I have been the best edited in the Christian market than I
Really?
ever was
Oh,
in the
that's neat.
general market.
Yeah.
Just so well done,
Hmm.
and I really learned to write though better
Hmm.
when I started being edited.
Yeah.
And there are still things I don't do right. My editor knows this that I'm always going to want to put, I don't know, commas where they should be, em
Oh.
dashes.
Hmm.
I don't know. Just
Right.
I will do those things wrong, and it doesn't matter how many times so they just learn this about me.
Yep.
This is just one of the things where
I
she's
know.
just not.
Yep. Yep. I think my
That's not
editors
the
have
right example, but I can't think right now
I
what would
totally get
be.
what you're saying, though. I totally get what you're saying. I think I've used the words he gazed, she gazed, they gazed so many times, and gaze is like my catchword. And my editors just, I think they just do a search on my document and go change them all.
Well, and I tend to get the word of the book is what I call it. So it
Oh,
isn't
okay.
always gaze, although I tend to do gaze. Gaze shows up a lot
Hmm.
too, but I tend to have a word of the book that I remember reading a famous romance writer in the general market,
Okay.
and I noticed that her heroine always stood with her arms akimbo, and her
Akimbo.
heroes too. So akimbo, that was her word of the book.
Yeah.
And so it made me very aware that we tend to fall into something, and it's not always the same one.
Hmm.
That
That makes
maybe
sense.
maybe it'll be several books in a row, but
Right.
you'll get some word in your head, and you just use it a lot,
Yeah.
and try
Yeah.
to edit it out, but it doesn't
Doesn't
always
always
happen.
happen. No, no. Oh man. So you did 30
So
books with
anyway,
the
I
general market and then you moved into the Christian market. So tell us a little bit about that. That's interesting.
well, I was life happened, and although I was a Christian who
Hmm.
started out writing in the general market with very definite parameters,
Hmm.
um, life happened, and I drifted in my faith.
Sure.
My didn't deny Christ, but I wasn't opening my Bible every morning, that kind
Absolutely.
of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I caved to a lot of the pressures
Mm.
that came in the general market. And then God got a real grip on me.
Mm.
And because I felt like I had damaged my testimony, I
Mm.
didn't think that God could ever use me in
Oh,
that way.
sure.
And then I read Francine Rivers' Redeeming Love
Mm.
in the general market
Hmm.
version. And she and I were both up for an award in California the following spring. And we bonded in this. They were going to tear the hotel down because it's where the California Adventure is now.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
And so like I had a gap between my wall and the glass from the most recent earthquake.
Oh my
And they were
goodness.
anything in this hotel because it was going to be torn
Oh
down.
my
So
goodness.
I remember we spent an afternoon in this seedy bar of the hotel just talking
Hmm.
for hours. And she had signed with Tyndale, and she was
Accompanied
sharing
him to the station.
all
The next
about.
he appeared sober. He greeted her courteously, if
Sorry,
Then the audiobook started.
that was my audiobook just started playing.
I've had mine
Oops.
do that randomly too.
So anyway, I'm going
I
to
love
close
it.
that so it doesn't start again. Anyway, we just talked, and she shared her faith, and it set me on a new
Mm.
path. And God it took a long time. I'd sit in the back of the church again because I was making a fast escape because I didn't think God could really use
Sure.
me.
Yeah.
But he had a major healing to do, and it was like
Mm.
Sunday after Sunday. The pastor had obviously looked into my life and had written the sermon just
Just for
for
you.
me.
Hmm.
And God brought more and more Christian authors into my life, not just
Hmm.
Fanny, but Liz Curtis Higgs and
Yeah.
Patricia Hickman, and oh, I'm going to blank on so many that were part of those early
Right.
years in the 90s.
Hmm.
And two of the people that were in this little group, we were all part of Romance Writers of America, and we were
Hmm.
Christian authors. And two of them were also editors as well as writers.
Okay. Hmm.
And they both asked me to do a proposal for them.
Mm.
And at that time, God had given me a dream that was the opening of what would become The Forgiving Hour, my first book in the Christian
Yes.
market.
Okay.
And it was contemporary. I'd never written contemporary.
Hmm.
Um, and I was still working through a lot of things. So I just had put it aside in
Hmm.
my mind.
Hmm.
And then, although I gave them a historical romance proposal, one of the editors wanted me to talk to the president of the company and the head of marketing because she wanted them to know my heart for
Sure.
God.
Sure.
And at the end of that call, I just all of a sudden, and I hadn't really given this book any thought for more than a year.
Hmm.
And I said, "Do you have a minute more that I could tell you And so I told them the dream and
Hmm.
the real place in my life that this had come from.
Sure.
And within a week, I had a 3-book contract, which
Wow.
most of us know doesn't happen,
No,
very,
no, that's
very
very
often.
unusual. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And that was the start of my writing Christian fiction, which of
yeah.
course was terrifying because I'd never done a Christian book and I'd never done a contemporary story. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden I signed a contract,
Yeah,
just that.
right. To do three of them
But
too, and you're like,
yeah.
ah.
So, but that was the beginning. And so I've done another I've done 60
Sure.
some books
Yeah.
since then.
Wow. That's
And
really cool.
in the recent years I've gone independent.
Yes, yes. And that's so neat
So
too. I mean, even that market's changing. Like years ago, I remember going to, in my early writing days, going to writer conferences, and they're like, self-publishing really is no, independent publishing, no, don't, no. And now so many people are doing such a wonderful job of, and it just gives us so many more options that the traditional publishers can't possibly publish all of the authors that have such great stories to tell. That's so cool. So as a somebody who's written in the general market and then now spent the majority of your later book writing in the Christian market, what responsibilities do you think a Christian author has writing a story that are different than being a writer without a faith-based element?
well, I think God calls Christian writers to write different things first off.
Hmm.
So mine is not going to look. I was certainly heavily influenced by Francine Rivers'
Sure. Hmm.
books, and she's very overtly Christian in
Hmm.
her fiction. And my books are very overtly Christian. And
Hmm.
it's not because I say in my head, that's what I want to be. That's my voice. That's who
Sure.
I. And there is nothing wrong with people writing parables.
Hmm.
I mean, Jesus taught in parables and people got it.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
um, I do think for the label Christian fiction, I prefer for Christ to be obvious.
Yeah.
But certainly there are a number of Christian publishers who are actually now publishing clean fiction
Hmm.
and not truly Christian fiction.
Hmm.
And there's a place for clean fiction
Yeah.
as well. But I think the responsibility that falls on the author is to correctly label.
Mm.
I want people to know that this book is Christian fiction. And I've
Hmm.
written uh, my first true indie.
Okay.
I have other books that I've independently published that were actually reverted
Hmm.
books. They were
Hmm.
originally published by a traditional. But my first true indie book, um, it just came out of me clean fiction. And so
Mm.
that's how I label it. And
Hmm.
I think there are people who have picked up on themes that are obviously part of my Christian worldview. And
Sure.
so I don't think they see it as clean fiction. I think they still see it as Christian fiction.
Sure.
Um, but I'm trying to, label it accurately,
Hmm.
as accurate as I can. Um, so all that to say, you know, we we listen to the way God has us tell stories, and
Hmm.
we tell those stories, and mine is going to look very different from somebody else's, and we need to be okay with that. I read one book from a Christian publisher that I was a little upset because it was very new age,
Mm.
and I kept waiting for the protagonist to
Sure.
understand, and it never did. And that
Mm.
will always bother me, and it bothers me that it came from a Christian
Hmm.
publishing house.
Hmm.
Um, but then we have a well-known secular publisher who also has an inspirational line.
Hmm.
And I did a few books for them, and I have to attribute, I think, the success of the line to the Christian authors writing for them.
Hmm. Hmm.
because the editors aren't necessarily people of the Christian
Right.
faith.
Right.
And
Right.
so I go kudos to those authors because
Yeah.
they are sharing real truths.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a responsibility that falls on our shoulders. And when I think of myself as a Christian through the years, when I was an early Christian, okay, I hate to admit this, but I'm going on YouTube and saying it. I called Paul a male chauvinist pig.
Sure. Sure. It's not the first time I've heard that. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
when I mean, I was in my 20s, I was a new Christian.
Hmm.
Um, I I would say I've always been a pretty from a conservative family and conservative thinking, fiscally and
Sure.
morally and all that. But um, I still was a child of, coming of age in the 60s.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so in the 70s, when, I was just like, well, I didn't get it.
Hmm.
And I didn't understand the book culturally
Hmm.
and correct to that time.
Hmm.
And I didn't understand that Paul was writing some of these things that I was taking great offense at. Um, I didn't understand that he was speaking to a specific situation in a specific church body.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
And so as I've matured and as I've grown in understanding the Bible from a historical and cultural
Hmm.
context,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, then of course I love the writings of Paul. Oh my goodness, if
Yeah.
I've ever said that. I mean, all of his books are among my favorite books in the Bible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's, so I think where I think of myself through the years of places where my thinking has been wrong,
Mm.
and God so graciously brought me to a new place of understanding.
Right.
And so I have to offer that same sort of grace
Yeah. Yeah.
elsewhere
Yeah.
where I see, oops, I didn't really care for that. I didn't
Hmm.
care for that thing. I didn't care for that lesson. And I have to remember we're all in different places. And sometimes I have people read things into my books that I didn't have there. I didn't
Right.
see.
Right.
I don't get it. And they react to that sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. And 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 I have to go, boy, that wasn't my intent, whether it was
Hmm.
positive or negative. That isn't what
Hmm.
was said.
Right.
But somehow, and remember, as a reader, we bring our life
We
experiences.
do.
And so people take out of my books things that I don't often, was not my intent.
Right.
Um,
Right. No, I hear you on that. I
I
had
do the
one.
same.
Yeah, I do too. And I had a reader email me once about one of my books, and she emailed me. She's like, "Oh," and it was such a sweet email, and it was all about how she loved the way I drew the biblical parallels to this, that. And she basically had a whole devotional out of my book, and I'm like, I, wow, I didn't know that was in there. I was like, that was not even on my mind, but I'm grateful that God used it for whatever he used it for with you.
And that's exactly it,
Yeah.
is that I show up as a writer, you show
Hmm.
up as a writer, and we do the best we can
Right.
in our offering to the Lord. And what he does with it,
Hmm.
he does with it.
Right.
That's him. That's not me.
No.
And I'm just, putting the words on the page and hoping to do my best and offer it to him
Yeah.
as clean as I can, as good as I can,
Right.
as expertly as I can. But what he does with it, when I was early in my career, I had an article in the Romance Writers Report, which
Mhm.
was the magazine of RWA.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit about me making the shift to the Christian market, but we hadn't really talked about Christian themes or anything like that.
Sure.
And at the end of the interview, the person said, "Is there anything you'd like to add?" Or
Hmm.
and I said, a line that I throw away all the time in person and in articles that I'm a very open person. I'll answer anything except for questions about my weight. And it's a throwaway line. It is
Yeah.
not meant to be anything deep. And I had said that at the end of the article, and I
Okay.
got I think it was an email. We're talking in the 90s, so not
Sure.
everybody had email,
Right.
but I'm pretty sure by then enough did.
Hmm.
And the gal said, "Were you serious that you would answer any questions?" And I said, "Yes," and wasn't sure what she was going to ask. And it ended up being a question about the Bible, about
Mm.
what she'd gone into a bookstore and she said, "There's so many options. I left without anything."
Oh,
And so we carried on this conversation. And by the end of the conversation, she'd become a Christian. And
wow.
and all I'd done was say I'd answer a question about anything except
Except
my
my
weight.
weight. Oh, yeah.
And so all these years, we're talking, 20, 25 years
Hmm.
now that
Hmm.
that's been. And I always remember that
Yeah.
of, you know how God's going to take
Right.
uh, what
Right.
you say and
Exactly.
use it. So you
Exactly.
just be open.
Absolutely. Well, it's so true. And it's so neat to see. I mean, if anybody has ever been to a reader's retreat or an area where a bunch of readers are collected with authors, especially in the Christian industry, it's so neat to see that relationship as you start seeing from the authors going, what? That's what you, oh, wow, that's so cool. Like just seeing how God is able, it's encouraging as a writer to see how God is able to use what so often we feel like at the end of the book that we've just written is like, and I'm done. And yep, the career's over. This is the worst
That's
story
right.
I've ever
When they get
written.
this one, when they
I,
get this one, it's done.
yeah, yeah. I don't think
Yeah.
even, God himself could not redeem this book, you know? And then you meet the readers that are like, oh, it just something about the book or the story or the character, or maybe it's just one phrase just stuck out to them and really affected them. And it's like you said earlier, those situations are so humbling because you
Mhm.
don't set out with this, I'm going to change the world aspect when you're writing a story.
No, definitely not.
No, no, no. Oh, funny. Okay, so you are working on books. So what is the latest and greatest coming from the desk of Robin Lee Hatcher?
Well, I'll share just what just came out, which is a Christmas book, Wishing for
I
Mistletoe,
love that.
which
Right.
I have to say, when I finished writing this book, most of the time,
Hmm.
I just am so sick of a book by the time I finish it because it's never going to be any good and I'm just done with it in some
This is
moments.
honesty right here. I love it.
Yeah, so if there's a smile, if there's happiness at completing a book, it's because it's done.
Done.
I'm finished with it. But this book, I will be honest, I finished writing it with just the dumbest smile on my face. It made me feel good as a
Oh,
writer. And so many of the reviews are about how it made them just feel good and they finished it with such a smile. It's just so anyway, I'm real happy about that one.
I love
Um,
that.
I just finished writing the third book in the British Are Coming series.
Hmm.
The series is about three people that come to America in 1895 to
Okay.
spend a year in the American West.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so the first two are out. I'll go ahead and show those because I have
Oh
them
yeah,
here.
do that. Oh, I love them.
See, I can't do
Yep.
this.
Yep.
There we
There
go.
you go.
So the novella is first, and that's
Okay.
set in England.
Okay.
And it introduces the people that are coming to
Hmm.
America. And
Hmm.
then this is the first full-length novel, To Marry an
Right.
English Lord.
Yeah.
And then To Catch a Mountain Man is the one that I just finished writing.
Ooh, I like that
And
title.
yeah, and it opens with the hero who is a game scout in Yellowstone National Park
Oh,
rescuing the British heroine from the river after she's been shot at by poachers.
oh, I
And
like that. Yeah.
then while I'm revising that one, I'm
Hmm.
also started a new novella. The King's Meadow romance books, they're all I used song titles for all the books, and there's three novels and there's one novella.
Hmm.
Publisher has agreed to allow me to use that novella and put it in a collection with another novella
Oh, cool.
that's self-published.
Hmm.
And so I was what what song is going to inspire me? And I was at my hair salon and my stylist said, "Oh, there's a really great song out called, oh, I almost don't want to say it because I'm letting it out. So I'll say it anyway.
Okay.
Bible in a 44."
Mm.
And it's about this gal is singing about her old man. And uh, he taught me how to hunt and how to love the Lord. He carried a Bible and a 44.
Oh.
And so I went searching for the story
Hmm.
to go with that. And I'm setting it in 1932. So it's
Ooh.
an origin story from
Yeah.
the one that existed. And I'm having a lot of fun
That sounds so
writing.
great. That sounds so fun.
And that's one of the beauties of indie publishing
Hmm.
is that I didn't have to ask anybody. Um,
Right.
the story, okay, the story captured my imagination and I'm going with it.
Yep.
And it's probably on, it's a novella,
Hmm.
so it's probably on track to publish by March.
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, that's I won't finish writing it till the end of the year,
Yeah.
and then it'll go to the
Hmm.
editor. But again, they're not on that same kind of time frame that the
Right.
traditional
Right.
publishers are on. And so, um,
Yeah.
she said she could squeeze me in. So
That's
she,
so cool. I love it. I love it. So there's so much for readers to read from your books. And the Christmas one is called Wishing for Mistletoe.
yes,
Is that correct? And so is that a contemporary or is that a historical?
it's a
It
contemporary.
is.
It's a
Okay.
contemporary story. Yeah,
Okay.
it's set on an island that everybody, says it sounds like Mackinac
Okay.
Island,
Yep. Yep.
and which is actually what it's supposed to sound like.
Oh,
Uh,
perfect. Then you
and
succeeded.
it's part of a series that I did with five other authors.
Hmm.
So we all did a book during different times of the year
Oh,
on
fun.
the island, Sanctuary
Okay.
Island.
Okay.
And mine was the last book, and I got to be Christmas, which was made it real fun.
That's
And I
perfect.
think it's the first time I've ever written a Christmas story actually, you know, closer to
To
Christmas.
Christmas?
Usually
Yeah.
I'm writing it, in the
In
summer.
July. Right. Exactly. When you're not feeling remotely Christmassy at all.
Yeah.
Oh, fun. Well, Robin, if readers want to get to know you, follow you, find your book list of all the books you have out, what's the best way for them to stay in touch and keep track?
The best way is to go to my website,
Hmm.
robinleehatcher.com, and they can sign up for my newsletter, which of course I hope they do,
Hmm.
and they'll get a free novella
Okay.
ebook
Yep.
when they sign up. I'm on Facebook. I'm on X.
Hmm.
Those are the two social media that I'm on the most, but
Okay.
I'm not the most active in the world. Let's just really be honest. I'm not. But
That's
but
okay.
my newsletter is my favorite way to talk to readers because,
Sure.
I tell them a little bit about what's going on in my life and what's
Hmm.
coming with the writing
Hmm.
and so forth. So that's my favorite. But
That's great.
um, they can always contact me. There's a contact form through my site that they can email me, and I
Awesome.
do answer all my own emails. So
Wow. So yeah, if you get an answer from Robin, you're actually getting an answer from Robin. That's awesome.
that's right.
Oh, fun. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and kind of talking about the whole course of Christian fiction. It's just neat. A lot of readers, I don't think, realize how it's evolved over the years, and it's fun for them to hear that and then also see that some of their favorite writers from the 90s and 2000s are still pumping out the books.
Still doing it.
Still doing it. Oh, Robin, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Jamie.